pick up on the log since of live stream. Okay. Good. Yes, ma'am. All righty. Morning, everybody. Here and there. We'll go ahead and get started. It's 9:02-ish, 3-ish, whatever. So we'll call this meeting to order. Good. Yeah. I don't need to hear this 4 times. All righty. Peggy sent out materials with the agenda and the minutes from the last meeting, so I'll entertain a motion. Are there any changes to the minutes? First of all, did anybody notice? I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from our November 16th meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, Carrie. Is there a second? Thank you, Mark. All righty, all in favor? Some form of recognition.
Aye.
Okay. Minutes are approved. And we're going to roll right into Maryland Food Center Authority updates. And Angela is our lead here today.
Thank you, Gail. Good morning, everyone. Don is out on medical today, so I'm going to do my best to fill his normal shoes this morning and just give everyone an update on what's been happening here at the Food Center Authority. We are going to only have one vote today in this MFCA update section. And so since we have a quorum right now, we're just going to jump right into that first so that we can get this out of the way. Everyone should have received on Monday in your email a copy of our procurement policy. Renee, could you pull that up, please?
And it's also in the book. Yeah, it's in the back of the booklet. In the very back. And I want to share it.
Yes, please. So the overall state, they have their own procurement regulations, and in our statute, we are allowed to write our own procurement policy. And we brought this procurement policy to this board a few years ago to have it approved, and then since then we've brought it with any updates. And so today we're back today with some updates. Some of them are just very minor edits, and there's a couple of substantive changes that we'll walk through. The first thing that we did was we needed to update the code references. And so this first section here, you can see that it used to say Article 41 section and continues, but now we needed to update it to the new reference to the correct code. And so we worked very closely with Miriam on this to ensure that we had everything just right. So as you go through the document, you'll see this over and over again. All we're doing is just making sure that we're referencing the correct code now. The other thing that we did was we wanted to update the limits for our small procurements for category 1, category 2, and category 3. These types of procurements are the small ones. And when we were originally passing this policy, the spirit of this was to capture procurements that were significant. And I think we can all agree that $5,000 today is not the same thing as $5,000 just a few years ago. So what we are finding is that we are going out to procure things that we have always procured without going through this very rigorous process of doing a procurement. And we're having to now go out and get 3 bids. So just an example is that happened last week. We needed to do something that is very normal and regular for us. We needed to replace one of the gate arms going into the market because they now cost more than $5,000 when they didn't used to. Now we have to follow this procurement policy, which requires us to get 3 vendor quotes instead of just going out, need a new gate arm, buy the gate arm and get it delivered. Now we have to go through this whole process of getting the 3 quotes and doing a formal contract. What we would like to do is we would like to increase these limits to change from 5,000 to 10,000 for the first category to 15,000 to 20,000. And then we'd also like on category 2s to increase that from 20,000 to 35,000. And then for the category 3s, just the lower limit would be changed from 35,000 up to 100,000. The other thing that we would like to do under category 1 procurements, and this is in response to the real world example that happened last week, is in these smaller procurements, we wanted to change the wording to say that we need at least 2 procurements. When I'm going to be reviewing these procurements, I'm going to want to see 3, but there are some times when something is so specialized that we can only get 2. So we would like to at least have that available to us when we have a situation like we had last week. And then the other changes that you would see here, there are just some very minor edits as we go through. There was one that was really funny to me. We have reviewed this document ad nauseum, and we have missed every single time the word employee was missing in a sentence, and Miriam caught it. So we put the word employee in there. And then the last substantive change is that we want to add procurements that are called time and materials contracts. Previous to today, the policy is completely silent. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to provide the framework for us for what do we do under the time and materials contract, but also what do we want to require of our vendors when we're going to be doing a time and materials contract. So the highlights for this that is only in the T&M section is that each of these T&M procurements will contain a ceiling. This will be negotiated at the beginning of the process. Now, that doesn't mean, as the project is going on, that something can't happen and cause us to go above that ceiling. Because it does happen. For example, imagine that we, in the drawings, say that there's 6 inches of concrete, and then we get under and we have 12 inches of concrete. That is going to cost more money and potentially take us over what we thought would be the limit when we started the project. In that event, the contractor can reach out to us when they get to 85%, and then they can request with documentation to increase that ceiling. And then we would review it, and then we would approve it, only if we wanted to approve it. Then the other very significant change would be that for every invoice that we receive from that vendor, they would have to provide a tremendous amount of documentation to us to prove their time, to prove their materials to us. So every invoice will have to contain all of the time sheets and time cards so that we can demonstrate the number of hours, and also any invoices that relate to the materials before those could be paid. And so that is all specifically detailed in here so that we know what we need to do before we can't give it. Because this is all in the way. Sorry, this at the top's in the way. So
Paragraph 3 on page 6.
Yep. So that's what we'll be able to do. And so these are the that's the substantive change. Again, there's the minor edits. And so what I would propose at this time, if well, first, are there any questions to anything that you see in here? Okay, go ahead, Brian.
My only question is the raising the category 1, etc. Is that a line?
Well, their procurement manual, is that what you're asking? They have very different categories, because their category 1 starts at 0 and goes from 0 and up from there. So while they do have different categories, we wouldn't follow theirs because theirs is very different than the ways that ours is set up.
If I would only offer that Board of Public Works is actually and Department of General Services are redoing the procurement regulations right now, and they are increasing they're modifying the regulations that relate to small procurements because statutorily the threshold for small procurements was raised. I want to say effective last year, but the corresponding regulations weren't changed. So the state is also making changes statewide in connection with small procurement.
So then on page
I have a question. Actually I have 2 things. One is, what happens for procurements between 5,000 and 15,000?
We would be able to deal directly with the vendor and purchase those without issuing a contract. That's the only difference. There would be no formal contract issue.
And then you don't have to go through those processes that are outlined below that.
Correct. Which is what we do now for anything that is from 0 to 5,000.
Okay. And then the second item on number 3, page 7, number 3, is that supposed to be fractional parts of an hour?
One more time, Darren, where are you?
I'm on page 7,
Okay.
at the top of the page, number 3. Is that supposed to be fractional parts of an hour?
Fractional, yes.
Yes,
Good catch.
thank you.
Good eagle eye, fractional.
Darren would have found the word.
That's all I had. Thank you.
That's what we know. Thank you. Carrie, go ahead.
I just had a question then, is that why you keep the 5,000 under, and page 3 at the top under 6? Do not apply to purchases less than 5,000, and so that doesn't get raised up to 15,000.
Oh,
it does.
Yeah,
it should.
it should, yeah.
Should. Okay, so the top of 3,
That's a great change.
change that 5,000 in the first section to 15. What page? Page 3, top of page 3.
Any other discussion?
Just curious, how much was that fence key thing?
It was 8,000,
Okay, previously it was like,
less than 5,000.
and not directly related to this, but I'm just curious, I know we talked a little bit about it. Your accounting contract, but how are you guys?
Last year for our annual report, I believe we reported 31%. But we definitely strive to reach the 29%.
And do you think these changes will affect your ability to meet those goals?
No, when we have an MBE, let's explain what we do with MBEs. If we have an MBE that we deal with, every single purchase for them ends up with a contract, whether it's a task order or a change order, there's something that is issued so that we can get credit for the MBE. Okay, so is there any other discussion? Because I can propose a motion that someone can make. So I'm going to propose a motion to revise the MFCA procurement policy by adding procedures for time and materials contracts, increasing the limits for 1 and 2 small procurements, and the lower limit of category 3 small procurements, and revising the policy's code references. Would anyone like to make that motion?
And let's just say as edited.
Okay,
Okay. By this group, with the minor changes that we added to the motion to revise
thank you.
MFCA procurement policy as edited at this meeting by adding those time and material contracts and then increasing the categories.
So moved.
Carrie, thank you. There's a second?
I'll say.
Okay, thank you. All righty. We've already kind of had discussion before the motion, but that's okay. All in favor?
Aye.
From the- Okay, all opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you, Miriam and Angela, for working on this, and other eagle eyes for catching some of these things. These are tedious but very important documents.
Very appreciated.
Okay.
Okay, so now everyone can just relax.
So with that, we're back
to listen.
still to the beginning of the agenda, Food Center Authority updates, more updates.
As Ben mentioned at our last meeting, we talked about terminating the audit service contract with the prior auditing service because of the delays that we experienced with them. And so after that meeting, we did go back to the second lowest bidder for the invitation for bid that went out previously. And we vetted that auditing firm and we were able to issue a contract to them. And they are also providing a percentage of the contract as an MBE because they are not an MBE, but they are providing a portion of the contract as MBE. And they used to audit us. So this is a returning firm. So I look forward to being able to present the financial statements one time here that we haven't been able to do for several years. The next thing I'd like to speak about under procurement is the produce market expansion. And this, just to give a little bit of background, this is at the Maryland Wholesale Produce Market. There are 29 produce tenants that occupy 330,000 square feet down there. When these buildings were built in 1974 and then expanded in 1977, the concept at that time for food distribution involved an open dock. And as we have now gone through the years, we're seeing trends going to this concept of cold chain compliance. And because of the open dock, there is the risk that the food could break cold chain. Just because it touches the dock doesn't mean it does break the cold chain. There is a period of time that they have between getting it off of the refrigerated truck and getting it into the refrigerated space. And it can only drop so many degrees before it does those two things. But for anyone who is a customer, they have to factor that risk into doing business with that company. So what we want to do is we want to extend out the back dock of both of the buildings and enclose it. And then that's going to allow all of the tenants to have something that we're calling cold chain compliant capable building. Now, why do I have to say capable? It's because even though we're building the building and we're enclosing it, it's gonna be up to the tenant to install the refrigeration in that area. And the reason why we do that is because refrigeration is a very specialized thing for each tenant. Every tenant will want what they want in that space. And not all produce requires refrigeration. So for some people, they may end up having to pay more money for something they don't even use. So Gary and I, we visited a market, another produce market, probably about 5 years ago or so. And at that time, that particular facility included refrigeration in their rent, and their rent was more than 10 times higher than our rent. And so what we do is we keep the rent low and allow the tenants to install what works for them in their own space. So that's why we say it's a cold chain compliant, capable building, exactly. We do have a commitment from the state of Maryland for $10 million to be used over 5 years. And we also have a commitment for $2 million from Howard County, which we have received $1 million at this point. Because the $10 million is in the Department of Agriculture's budget, we were invited to attend the Senate and the House hearings for the budgets this year, and we did attend, and they didn't have any questions at all. In fact, they didn't even mention it. So I think we're gonna be just fine accessing that money in the future. Also, for the produce market expansion, we have entered into the design, development, and construction document phase. And what this means is once we get through the construction document phase, we will have the tangible items that we need to go out for bid. We're gonna have the drawings, we're gonna have the scope of work, we're gonna have the specifications. That'll all get posted on Emma, and then we go out for bid. Since our last meeting, when we entered the design development phase, we needed to issue a task order for something that was greater than $500,000 to the architect who is continuing to work on the project. Our procurement policy requires us to bring to the board anytime that we have a procurement greater than $500,000. If the executive director determines that we can't wait for the next meeting, then the procurement committee can make that decision and then come back to the board and we give you an update on what has happened. So that is what has happened. We received that task order. We issued all of the information to our procurement committee. They asked very meaningful questions, and at the end, they voted to approve it's called task order number 5 for GVA, which is the architect. And as of right now, and they voted to approve it. And the project right now is with civil engineering. And then the next step after that is that it will go to the county for approval. And then the next step after that is that we will go out for bid. When I spoke to the architect last week, he mentioned to me that BG&E would like to have a meeting with us soon to talk about the electrical needs of the market. As you can imagine, all these coolers are very demanding for electricity. So since we're in the design phase right now, BG&E would like to come and meet with us to speak through all of that. So I'll probably be able to have an update for that at our next meeting. The architect is anticipating that we would go out for bid 3rd quarter of this year, and then we get to do construction. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, then I'm going to move into a leasing update. Back in 2004, we built a building and entered into a lease for a company that does seafood cross-dock. Now, what does that mean? The seafood industry has terrible hours, in my opinion. They start at like 1 or 2 a.m. and then they work until the morning, and then they're done for the day. So it's very common that they're going to have a delivery at 1 p.m. But they're closed. There's nowhere to take that delivery. So we built this building and that we have rented to this company since 2004 so that these deliveries can be made at this cross-docking facility. It goes into their cooler. And then when they're open the next day, or I should say in the next middle of the night, then they go and they make that delivery to one of our tenants. This original lease from 2004 actually ended 12/31/2022. We entered into negotiations to do an expansion at this facility. So we brought an extension to this board and also to the Board of Public Works for approval. And that was done through 12/31/2024. That tenant has since backed out of the expansion project. We incurred over $100,000 in costs for this. So we are right now preparing the new lease, and included in this lease are all of those costs that we are going to be getting back from them through the lease. I've already spoken to the tenant. They know that this is happening and they're actually very thankful that we're not demanding the payment immediately and that we're allowing it to be incorporated into the lease. So we will be bringing that lease when it's finished. We're working on it now. We will bring it back to this board and then it'll go to the Board of Public Works. So we need to have it in effect by 1/1/25.
How much money did you say?
It's approximately 105,000, going by memory, but I know it's just over 100, yes. Recently, Don and our whole gang, we had the opportunity to meet with the new mayor of Rock Hall, and that is where our Rock Hall Clam House is located. And so it was a great meeting. We were able to hear about some of his initiatives, and we also were able to reaffirm our commitment to the historical maritime community. And it sounds like there will be the opportunity for us to be able to partner with them for initiatives that will be good for the Clam House. So it looks like we're gonna have a really great relationship with the new mayor of Rock Hall. And
Is that, what's there?
gosh, do you remember what his name was?
I like
Yeah.
clams.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, yeah, that was actually. And then the other item at Rock Hall, and I probably will not be able to say this for the rest of my career, but on February 29th, so weekday, 600 square feet of space at the Clam House was returned to us. We have a tenant there who had 2 spaces, and so now he has consolidated all of his back into 1 space and has given us that 1 space back. So we're actively working on filling that space now. Does anyone have any questions on leasing? Oh, and we continue to be 100% occupied here, 100% occupied everywhere, except for this 1 space that we just got.
Yeah, John, I don't know specific words, but I'm bringing up. This past year we had the problem at Apple production. I just worked it out, so. Storage. Would be. The opportunity for those.
Will do, and I can tell you that Department of Agriculture is on our wait list. So you're definitely in there already as someone that we contact when space comes to us. So all of our leases for our markets are either through June 30th, 2027 or June 30th, 2029. It depends what lease that they're on. And so what generally happens is that the tenant themselves determines who comes in next through an assignment. The only time that I get to vet someone new for a brand new lease would be if the lease is terminated. So if there's calls to terminate a lease. And the reason why the tenants want to do the assignment is because of the tremendous investment in their units. So when those units change hands, there's a side deal that occurs. They're going to be paying for that refrigeration. So we don't have anything to do with that. So generally speaking, most of the time when it changes hands, it's due to an assignment. And it doesn't come, I mean, I vet them, but it doesn't come through us to make that decision. It's the tenant who would make the decision of who to put forth for us to vet. But Department of Agriculture's up there on the wait list, and I will never take you off. I will always look to you.
The mayor's name is James Cook.
James, there you go.
Okay,
That's a hard.
yeah. Thank you, Peggy. So more, again, kind of a sidebar, are you, just because of what happened last fall, is the Apple industry looking at a possible
Well,
bad pun crunch again this fall?
I
Sorry, I have not seen.
Use that at a meeting.
I mean,
Don't give me credit.
all the dynamics that led to last year seem to be still there, so,
Okay.
yeah, there was some evidence out, Secretary of Sports, kind of thinking about what could happen, and, so we'll be looking, trying to get ahead of it.
So it is really a regional situation.
Oh,
Yeah. National, okay.
Any other questions for Lisa? Okay, so the next topic that we'll discuss is called the Maryland Market Center documents. And you may have heard this concept brought up before as calling them the NAFTRO documents, but that can be very misleading. So we should be calling these the Maryland Market Center documents. And I'm going to just give the history, a very brief history of what has happened. The Maryland Market Center is the site that is located adjacent to this building. There is our existing building that's located back there. And then in 2014, 2015, an existing tenant at our existing building said they would like to purchase a parcel and build their own building on it, which we did. Since then, there are two other parcels, but they're not parceled yet, but there are two other parcels back there where we have a ground lease with a tenant and they built the building. So they own the building that's on top of the land. So back in 2015, it was the first building that was built. There was a developer agreement that was created with Howard County. Because at that time, it was only the Food Center Authority, and it was this one entity that was doing development. Well, since then, now there are 4 parties that are responsible for the development back there. So we have been working with the county and with all 4 parties to update the developer's agreement so that now all 4 parties are responsible for the development back there. Another agreement that goes hand in hand with that developer agreement is called the Forest Conservation Agreement. So that has been amended and restated to include all 4 parties. Now I'll just take a moment to give kudos to Gary and Martin and his team for all of the work that they've done for that forest conservation, because we know it's been a lot of work where there is a line of residential homes located just behind this site here. And over the years, since 2014, 2015, they have been encroaching on the land. And so the maintenance staff handled that and they did a really great job. So big kudos for them. So in addition to those 2 agreements, we also updated something that's called a reciprocal easement agreement. And what this agreement does is it considers all the different expenses that could come up for that site back there. The old agreement only had 2 parties on it. The new agreement has become incredibly robust in the detail of who is in charge of each type. Like, there's an exhibit for driveways, there's an exhibit for stormwater, there's utilities. So everything has been really detailed to explain who is responsible for it and how much is the proportionate share for each one of those 4 parties. So now everyone is paying their fair share of the expenses for the Maryland Market Center now. And it's already working because we've already had expenses for stormwater and we just send it out to the different parties and then we get payment on it. So that's been going really great. And then the last item, and this board approved this when we met in November, but we had $1.2 million on the budget in order for the Food Center Authority to take over the surety for the Maryland Market site. The company that has had the bond for the construction bond to ensure the construction will be completed was the poor company from 2015. So they've been holding this bond and hasn't been doing work for all these years. And so they have been released from that bond. And then we have paid $1.2 million that the county is holding for us. And then when the construction is complete, they will return the money to us. And we're very close to being done, the whole construction. It's always challenging because we are not in control of that work because our work is finished. We have already paid for everything that we need to pay for the Maryland Market Center. There's still stormwater and there's also finishing the forest conservation, but we're going to be going through inspections and once that's all finished, but we're very close and those funds are going to be returned to us. Okay, and so that's all I have for the Maryland Market Center documents. Does anyone have any questions about that? Okay, so the next I want to talk about is the cyber security of the Food Center Authority. We were part of a cyber assessment that was conducted for all state agencies, and we received this very detailed report as a result of that cyber assessment. one of the things that the cyber assessment wanted us to do was we needed to write our IT policies. And so we did that. And the Food Center Authority is completely finished with our part of that. The IT policies are now with our IT consultant. And so what they're doing right now is they're just tweaking the policy, but also looking at the cyber assessment at the same time to create a list of projects that we can do that really targets the areas that have been identified on the cyber assessment that we haven't been able to address already. And so what I want to warn everyone is that when we come back here in November and we're looking at our budgets, don't be surprised when you see a cybersecurity number in the capital improvement budget, because we're going to be moving forward with those projects. Now, another document that goes right along with the IT policy is something called the document retention policy. Our document retention policy that is on file right now at the archives was written in 2006. And I know this because I wrote it. And it was in 2006 was the last time that we did a purge of documents that were in this building since 1970. And so we did a massive purge at that time. Because of this new IT policy, we wanted to take an opportunity to update our document retention policy. So what we've done is we've added way more columns into this document retention policy because our IT policy has explained that documents can have a data classification of low, it can have a risk assessment of moderate, or it can have a risk assessment of high. And depending on what that risk is going to tell us how do we have to handle this document. So this new document retention policy is way more robust than it used to be. And so I met with all the different heads of departments to make sure that we were also capturing all the different kinds of documents, because we do way more now than we did back in 2006. We had to add a lot of lines to it. And so it's now gone through the final review and there's one person left. And then when that's finished, we will send it to the archives and then they'll be able to have something from today instead of 2006 for the Food Center Authority. And then of course, the best thing is this summer, we will do a massive purge again and we'll get rid of lots of documents, Any questions on the cybersecurity? Okay. And then my last topic for today, we were very, very happy that the Ethics Commission offered to do an online training specifically designed for the Food Center Authority. And it was fantastic. They were able to really target the things that our employees see and how to face those challenges. And so what we did is the Ethics Commission, they presented from their place. It was done online. Our maintenance team, they were all here in the conference room participating online. And so our security guards, any that were available, they were able to participate at that time. Because remember, our security guards are 24/7. So some people work overnight. They weren't available for this. But what was so great is that the Ethics Commission allowed us to record the training. And so what that means is that all the security guards who couldn't be here were able to watch it at another time. In addition, when we're onboarding any new hire, they're going to get that ethics training right from the beginning. And they did let me know that if for any reason something changes and they think we need to do the meeting again, they will reach out to us and then we can update the video and get it. Does anybody have any questions on the ethics training?
Angela,
I'm sorry?
as the board,
I believe that the way that it works is anyone that has to do their financial disclosure does have to take the ethics training that is available online. That's the way I believe that it works.
I think it's the chairman has to do it.
I know I have.
Yes.
Yeah, when you go to do your financial disclosure, I assume all board members have to do a financial disclosure? Yeah,
Yeah.
so,
As a state
Yeah.
employee, I
Yeah.
support it.
Those of us who aren't, we do a financial
Private
disclosure.
citizens, correct.
And then I
Yeah.
know I've done an ethics training as well.
And I get notified if they don't, and then I make sure they do.
yeah, I believe that everyone's covered because anyone who's got the state training and anyone who's on the board has to file the financial disclosure and it's all done online.
Yeah, they're pretty
And it's
strict.
different training,
Yeah.
but it is done online. There's a lot more pictures on the one for financial disclosure.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I have. So I can turn it back over to.
Okay.
Gail.
All right. Any questions for Angela?
Sorry, I have one more question. As What's going on with the anaerobic digester?
Thank you, that was on my mind too. Yeah, just-
I don't have an update on the anaerobic digester. Do you know anything that's going on? That we take our,
We take a lot of stuff there. It's, I mean, it's up.
It's
up running. We haven't had any issues.
I think they had a flood one time, but there was nothing.
I pay an invoice once per month to them.
It's are the tests used.
Yeah, not all the tenants use it, but some of them are.
And we do weigh that trash,
Right.
and they only pay for what they put into the anaerobic digester, and the tip fee is significantly less
Right.
to tip it there.
In me toward,
Yes.
Yes,
yeah.
yeah, okay.
And then, so one last question, I know the state's law with, technical waste, does that have an impact? Or-
The companies that have to participate, you just. Okay.
Okay.
The only other update I would give is that they did open a new one in Delaware as well, if anybody's interested.
Okay.
And they just signed a new one in California. So,
Next time.
Mhm.
Okay.
Awesome that we're the flag.
Yeah, that's working so well, yeah, that's good.
And it's important.
Yes, extremely, extremely, okay. You're good for this meeting, okay, thank you. Alrighty, I think the next thing that we're gonna do is the statements of revenue and expenses that are also, they were emailed out and also in our packets. In the middle, there we go. Peggy has very colorful paper dividing our sections. Water in the end.
So the R&Ds that we're looking at here for the produce market and the Maryland Market Center, the key columns that I would always tell you to look at are the ones that say fiscal year 24 at the top. Because that's the critical piece of the puzzle that we're looking at right now. If the year were to end on November 30th, we would be returning to the produce tenants $2,702.45. Because they have overpaid for all of the costs to run the market. Now, when we pay something for the market, there is no upcharge, there is no admin fee. Whatever we get it cost due to the benefit of economies of scale, all that benefit goes back down to the tenants to the penny. We never charge anything more than what it costs us. So if we're looking at the produce market, we would be giving them a refund, $2,000. Now, if you look over at the Maryland Market Center at the bottom of the fiscal year 24, you can see that it is at a negative $18,380. But as I mentioned earlier today, we now have the reciprocal easement agreement in place, and now everyone is paying their proportionate share of what they should be paying down at the Maryland Market Center. So we should see this number improve as we go throughout the year. One of the items that is included in that REA is the cost of security. And so the cost of security is now going to be paid appropriately, and it has been since November. So we've got 2 months that they are paying exactly what they're supposed to pay in accordance with the. So this number will be positive. Any questions on the R&Ds? Okay, great. Well, we'll need a motion.
Yeah, I do need a motion to accept both of these R&Ds. We usually do those two together, right? So you
Yes,
say that.
together.
One motion for both. Yeah, so can I have a motion to accept the R&Ds for the market center and as well as the produce market? Thank you, Mr. Rowan. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, all in favor?
I,
Aye.
Fine. Okay, thank you. Anything else that needs to come to the attention of this group? So the cyber stuff is a work in progress, right? Okay. That's terrific. And
We're working it every day.
I'm
We
sure.
have an IT risk manager who works every day on these issues.
and our next meeting, Peggy, is scheduled for June sometime.
Tell you exactly.
Yep.
we have it in.
It was in the minutes.
That's incorrect, because it's the old one, we changed it since then, but
Oh,
to approve the minutes, I have to have it exactly as we stated them, so
Oh.
hold on 1 second.
How-
27 at 9 AM, June 27th.
So we probably won't have that cyber thing by then.
So that is a change to the original date, but I did send it out to everybody.
yeah, you're tired of having, yeah.
Costs, yeah, okay,
And it's updated on the website as well, if you're looking.
okay. Okay, anything else? This might be a record.
I'm gonna get to Ocean City fast.
There you go, okay, Carrie's packed and ready to go. I think I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Anybody?
So moved.
All right. Second for that. Okay, for honor. Okay, thank you. All right, thank you guys very much. Thank you, staff, as always, for having everything so
Yes,
organized and so
yes.
together. Your life must be good down there, right?